Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to ASA International Forum 2017. Good afternoon, Ajahn Pacharin.
Good afternoon, Ajahn Hansa.
I'm delighted to welcome you to the final sessions of ASA International Forum 2017 for today.
Before I introduce our last speaker of today, please allow me to remind you to turn off your mobile phone or switch it into silent mode. For those who have using translating headset, please control the volume that appropriate, that not disturb the author next to you. And also the parking receipt can also stand in front of the hall. Now it's time to begin our last sessions.
Our last speaker today is Mr. Anjalendran, an architect from Sri Lanka, who, in spite of his small-scale project, is renowned as one of the leading architects of his country and has gained global recognitions, with his work having been exhibited internationally, including the Royal Institute of British Architects. In his work, he draws inspirations from vernacular tradition of Sri Lanka while striving after architecture that, apart from performing its assigned function, also creates an environment in which people would feel happier.
The apparent similarities of his work to those of his great predecessor, Geoffrey Bawa, one of the champions of modern regional architecture in Asia, as well as found as Anjalendran, born in 1951. He was his assistant, traveling as accompaniment and friend to the former. However, unlike Bawa, he eventually shifted his focus toward larger structures. Anjalendran still remained engaging with everyday architecture. He worked with great attention to detail, supervising every aspect of the project, from interactions with the client to furniture design, being well aware of the challenges related to the building in the tropical monsoon climate. He integrated naturally sustainable elements in the building, such as green courtyards or cantilevered roof.
His well-known projects include Mount Cinnamon, SOS Children's Village, the Ellawala Gems Factory. Please welcome Mr. Anjalendran.
Okay, I'd like to start by thanking the Siam Institute of Architects for inviting me, and more than that, for giving a great hospitality, starting with Thale and KitKat and their group of 5, and 2 teachers. I have never had hospitality like this in my life, so I think that's great. So let me start. Generally, the things that interest me are vernacular buildings, not monumental buildings at all. So this is in a temple mural from about 400 years, a set of builders working on a building translated into a black and white drawing. And when I came back to Sri Lanka in 1977, after my studies at the Bartlett, I found that nobody had worked on any book on vernacular architecture or contemporary architecture. This is 30 years of work done by a lady called Barbara Sansoni and her husband Ronald Lucock with an artist called Lucky Senanayaka, which it took 15 years for me to put this book together. It's dedicated to me. So that inspired me and also helped me my own collections of measured drawings which are now being published. So I started collecting buildings which are not there. Now this is the sort of building that totally inspires me. It's an ambalama or a rest pavilion which has an amazing relationship to the landscape. It's on 4 boulders against a rock, so there's no damp and white ants attacking it. There is a double colonnade in which you can sleep. You can cook in the middle, and if you draw a lungi right around, you have privacy. And this is for me an ideal sort of building, and that is its relationship to the landscape. And I think that those are the things that for me are most important, not about how expensive or how big it is, but how modest it is and how well it relates to the landscape. This is a drawing from a water garden from a 1,000-year-old cave temple called Dambulla. This is a water garden called Kaludiyapokuna, also about 500, 600 years old. And you will find that all the axial elements are axial, facing the north-south direction. That is an ordination hall called a Sima Malaka. There is man-made, emphasizes nature, and because it's in ruins, you don't know where nature has taken over and man has taken. That's a stupa, that's a bath pavilion, that's a double platform above, and this is a lotus, rocks opening like lotuses, and this is my type, a perfect garden. I mean, you do get beautiful ruins here, but this is a different tradition where the organic is always incorporated into the formal elements of things. They're not brand new, meaning in most traditions, what is new and everything old is broken. Here, rocks and all are incorporated into the tradition. So that's your access way, and that is the water garden. The ordination hall is here, and that is the rocks opening like a lotus. It's called Kaludiyapokuna, which means a black water pool. And you can see here, that's the rocks opening, trees growing, and the monk makes the hand of man drawing attention to what is natural, and the monk completing the picture. It is this type of idea which, these are various other views from it. That's a bathhouse. That's a reality photograph from the same bathhouse. And you can see here, there's a reference to a river which may flow at the rainy time. That's a double platform. You can see where the man-made rock is incorporated into the natural rock. And these are the things that fascinated me. That's the same, another view of the same building. And that is Kaludiyapokuna once again. This is that sort of tradition. Those inscriptions are 300 BC, meaning they're 2,300 years old. They are Brahmi inscriptions. This is a cascading boulder retaining wall. That's an image house. This is Rasvehara, which is also 1,000 years old. And this is, again, a vernacular tradition where you raise things on columns, stone columns, and there's a large roof with females of birds to make it lighter, and that is where the image house is. So basically, in a tropical country, you need a large roof with ventilation to flow through with minimal walls and a stack effect to make it cool. So that's me with my students on a site visit. That's my book called The Architectural Heritage of Sri Lanka. We saw it in a bookshop yesterday or day before. And this is my mentor called Geoffrey Bawa. Now, one is very lucky to meet a person like this, because though he had a very good education in England, and he also did his architecture, he first qualified as he did English tripos and a lawyer, but most of his clients went to jail. His cousin said he should go and formally train himself as an architect, having seen his experiments in his garden called Lunaganga. But for Geoffrey Bawa, he inverted a lot of Asian, Western traditions in Asia. That is, for him, the building was never an object. It was a background in which you could relate to nature. I would go so far in to say that for Geoffrey Bawa, for him a building was to make a garden using building materials. That is not the way people ever looked at buildings, but he actually comes to architecture through landscape tradition. And as a student doing English, he was taken to see gardens, houses and gardens in France, Italy, and England. So he built a building like as he was building a garden. So there were vistas, surprises, unusual. And that is what makes his architecture quite unique and totally different from anyone else in the whole of Asia. I was glad, and my background is very simple. I did my first degree in Sri Lanka. The examiner was John Musgrove from the Bartlett, who invited me to come and do my postgraduate studies there. I did 2 more degrees there. I returned to Sri Lanka. I worked 2 years in Geoffrey's office. He didn't like it because I was doing unions. And then I worked in another office, but they weren't doing architecture. So Geoffrey encouraged me to go on my own. And for the next 10 years, I did my own work for SOS Children's Villages, but I did errands for Geoffrey Bawa for 10 years, for 40 hours a week or more, for no pay. But in that process, I learned architecture. It's a very common Asian tradition of a guru-sishya relationship. So for 10 years, for no pay, but every weekend I went to his garden called Lunuganga, where he sorts the differences between formality and what is organic. So this is the white book, which became very famous throughout whole of Southeast Asia. It was done in 1986, and the only reference to a Sri Lankan here is me for research. So this is my office. It now doesn't have 2, it has 6 people in it. That is my conference table, which is my dining table. That's my engineer, and that is my contractor. We do go through a transparent tender process, but he tries to see that, and he has done probably 85% of my work. So my home is my office. That is my mode of transport. That is Kuma, who has looked after me for 20 years, and that is my dog called Kalu. So I also taught architecture, 11 years as a first-year master, design tutor, and but 30 years as history tutor for years 2 and 3. So this is my own house. It's in a neighborhood where I've done actually 9 projects. So that's mine, that is my 2 cousins, that's another cousin, and that's my very close friend. So this is my own house in this neighborhood. So these are the drawings of the house. We do drawings after the buildings are over. You enter this way. You have a surprising double-height space there. There's a bedroom and a toilet and a part of my office sitting here. There's a kitchen and a storeroom, and there's a garage. And as you go up, there's an ante-room and a master bedroom here. It's a tent-like structure, right? But where you can hear good music. It's done in 250 square meters. The house is about 200 square meters. It's done in 1993. That is about 24 years ago. And at that particular moment of time, it cost something like $8,000. This is a colorist called Barbara Sansoni, who discovered that all browns had the opposite side of the color wheel. And this particular brown called Palu, rafters, she said had blue or an orange, but if you brought the blue, you brought the sky in, and the 3 yellow, if you did the 3 beams in yellow, you brought the sunlight, and if you did the main beams in turquoise, you brought the garden into the house, and each door was painted like a jewel. The doors are 300-400-year-old Dutch doors. So that's the entrance to my house. That is through the main door. You can look inwards. That's some shadows in the garage. That is in the rain. That's my office. That's my courtyard in the rain. That is from the veranda looking back. That's another view of that's my living room. Detail from up looking down at the living room. That's from the dining room. From the dining room looking into my bedroom. Tree growing above the guest bedroom toilet. That's the dining area. That's the anteroom to the main bedroom. That's my Buddhist shrine in the anteroom, which has a single bed. And that is the master bedroom with a whole series of Ganesh and his brother, Skanda. These are other views of the neighboring trees and roofs. And that's the detail from the toilet. Now, most of my life, for 14 years, I did SOS Children's Villages. So this is done in 1992. That is 25 years ago again. This is at the turn-off to the thing. That is the main road. That's the office main building. There's an avenue of trees. Wherever you have to change directions, there's a contemporary rest pavilion. This takes you to the kindergarten. That is the family house, senior co-worker workers, and there's a rest pavilion to turn round again. So these are views from the SOS Children's Village. So you can see as you enter, you see a pavilion. So it's all about also as if your progression of spaces and making it a garden. That's the office space. That's a village director. And that's a mother's club. That's a little pharmacy. And that's a library cum internet room. So that's a feeling. It has concrete rafters to save energy. That's through the avenue of trees, the link. And that's a rest pavilion through which you can go to the kindergarten or the family house. Those are the views of the family house with the rocks already in place. So in SOS is very simple. SOS was an organization organized by a guy called Hermann Meiner in Germany. He found that there were many young women who had lost their husbands or boyfriends for the war. There were also many abandoned children. But normally, in an orphanage, the children belong to a building called an orphanage. So what he did very simply was he brought up these single women with abandoned children in their own house, which they called a family house. So because this was done with the parents of and the family of the woman who looked after the children had aunts, uncles, grandparents, and so on. And so this is an idea. One of the slight restrictions here was that a house had to be 1,150 square meters, because bigger than that, it was difficult for the mother to maintain. Smaller than that, it was too much for 10 children. So this is the dining room, that's the living room. I put the kitchen in front because then the mother could oversee the children at play, and this was a double height space, right? And I think it's the first time in Asian, in the SOS Children's Village, the mother was put in front, where normally kitchens are at the back. Those are the sort of drawings, and as I said again, following the Geoffrey Bawa tradition, we do complete drawings once the buildings are over. So that is what it looks like. This stone was thrown by the quarry because it's where the granite meets the earth. It's a soft stone which you can use under eave, but it's now become rather fashionable to use it. That's the sort of atmosphere you get without a kitchen yard. Each house had an old door, an old column, because it was cheaper than new doors and columns. That's the interior of the house, where the sponsors, each sponsor sowed a flower. Each house is colored differently. And we went to the fabric house of Barbara Barefoot, which is Barbara Sansoni's, and said, please give us more design in the 36 inches rather than 54 inches. So we don't want you to charge us less. You can charge us the same price, but give us a slightly less width cloth, which are better design input. And my belief in architecture is that good architecture doesn't come from all sorts of things, that you could actually get good architecture if you spend more time and effort. That's all that needs to be done. It doesn't need to be more expensive. These are detailing of those buildings. That's a box window so that the children can read a book, sleep, and look at the neighborhood. That's a mother working in one of her kitchens. That's the access of the aunts to the central plaza. An aunt is somebody who looks after the children for a mother. If the mother is unwell, there's a guest pavilion there, two guest rooms and a guest pavilion. So that is the building. These are 4 aunts' rooms, which are 8 aunts. This is community dining, and there are 2 guest pavilions with a veranda there. So this is what it looks like. All those boulders are already there in the rock. So we are following the tradition of keeping whatever boulders existing in the landscape. So this is a senior co-worker house with 2 bedrooms, kitchen in front, living, dining, a little toilet and a store. That's what it looks like. That's from the central plaza looking at the rear pavilion, but you can see the rocks have been incorporated into the senior co-worker residence. That's again another view. That's from the pavilion looking back into the central plaza. That's a more recent view of the pavilion. That's a roofscape. That is from the pavilion going down. And this was, you must know that in Sri Lanka, this was at the height of the southern insurgency in 1989. These cost 5 rupees, which is about, how many bahts? 10 bahts. And they give so much joy to this whole neighborhood because, and that's the sort of thing that we did. These are ceremonial Portuguese Sinhalese decorations, which are in the temple murals. They form the inspiration for the play frames for children. And this is the kindergarten, which also, that's a bo tree under which the Buddha reached his enlightenment. This is the theater. This is 2 classrooms. There are 3 classrooms, but in the youth, summertime, they come and sleep here. There's an outer toilet and an outer pavilion for cooking. So this also helps in the youth camps. And that's the atmosphere. And the children tell their prayers each night, each evening, surrounding this bo tree. Right. Now, SOS also does community projects to help it integrate into the neighborhood. This is the school, the Herman Weiner School, which is the first project I did. This is the school. This is the Mothers Club. That is the youth village. And this is the senior school, which is 2 stories high, but the roofs are all at the same level. So that is the entrance to the youth village from an old cast iron grill. That's another view. So here you have a foreground, and temples have pinnacles, but this is with a bird to ensure that it is not, it's a domestic pinnacle and not a temple pinnacle. And that is Barbara Sansoni, one of our great colorists, textile colorists, using the color wheel to color this wheel, color the building, because I thought the building was a bit plain. And I think somebody wanted to know who Anoma Piris was. That's Anoma Piris. And that is, you go through the building, and it's your directions are shown. So this is the first courtyard with shades of red. This is what we call the rainbow room. So something very ordinary has been transformed into something magical by a colorist who knew how to use color, meaning it's not my idea of a color. And you can see your directional movement. The color expands the room. Here, the color contracts the room. You can only do it with somebody who actually knows how to use color. So this is the shrine room. That shows portals, RCC portals and rafters. That's again an old column and a door. And these murals were done by the art teacher using the youth, called Sirisena, who had studied under one of our great artists called David Painter. So the textiles for the laminated tablecloths were done by Ina De Silva, who is also one of Geoffrey Bawa's contemporaries and craftspeople. And that is what you get. And I think that in a country where one was faced with a 30-year war, and one was one of the minorities, one always strove to achieve a sense of peace, ethical construction space. And I think that one of the things you notice that if you go to any Buddhist site, or probably Islamic site, they're absolutely peaceful. I would say that for the same thing about the Hindu sites, which I am. So I think that this is by the organization of space you have created, you strive to create peace and tranquility. I go back to houses because this is essentially a thing on houses. This site was 500 square meters. It had a huge banyan tree here and 2 other trees, a jack tree and a cassia tree here. So here you entered looking at these 2 trees. That's a garage and a service area. There was a living dining. We are 30 feet above the neighbors with a veranda, dining, living, bedroom and a toilet. Here was a pantry and a kitchen and a veranda. Here the tree grows over the master bedroom. and another formal family living, and a library and a toilet. And the second bedroom is here, but you could look across the tree. And the tree grows all above that, above this veranda here, and that's an enclosed space, and that's a veranda. And so does these two trees. That is a section to show that you're 30 feet above the neighbors. That's a neighbor's tree again. These are the two trees between the two buildings. And that is the tree, as you'll see from the lower road, and that is exactly what you see. So banyan tree is equivalent to about 2 to 3 air conditioners. That's my building. The tree has grown over the whole building. So that's as you enter, that's from the little window, you see the cassia tree. That is, as you enter the main thing, you see the coconut tree of the neighbors from the bottom. That's a banyan tree growing over the pool. That's a dining room detail. That is between the two courts, a cassia tree growing through the roof. So the banyan tree is central to the house. It is everything. This is from the second floor toilet looking into the banyan tree. This is looking down at the pool. That is the banyan tree growing to the uppermost pavilion. I cut 2 little branches of the banyan tree. That is, you know, the client is a pilot. His grandchildren come and play Tarzan. And that is the neighboring tree, but sunlight hitting it. And you always have a puzzle. How can you build 3 stories, borrow other people's trees, but not their water tanks? So this is an exercise in that. Right. So this is a story called Mirissa Hills, where I've been working for the last 12 years. Suddenly I get a strange call from somebody called Irvin Virakodi, who says, Mr. Anjalendran, there's a client of mine who's coming on Sunday, important client, can you meet him? I said, sorry, I go swimming on Sundays, and I put the phone down. But I'm very glad that in Sri Lanka, of course, it's a very small community. If you know somebody, they know somebody. And so I knew that I was building a house with the IBM CEO, and he was a client of these people. And what happened is that this client had gone to see 8 other architects. He was not happy with any of them. So he was told that, look, there's an impossible guy called Anjalendran. You will hate him. He said, no, I think I'll be quite happy to meet him. So we actually met on Sunday. He was going to come with an entourage, and my entourage was my engineer who went to see his mother every Sunday, 150 kilometers away. So I said, okay, I'll meet you at 8 in the night. So he came 8 o'clock in the night, and there's a railway line here. This is the site. But from this side, you have a stunning sunset and a stunning view of mountains here, and so on. So I built for him his main estate bungalow there. He happened at that particular moment of time to head Ogilvy and Mehta, which is one of the major advertising agencies. This was a visitor center, because cinnamon is unique to Sri Lanka. There's a little inferior variety in Kerala. This is the cinnamon peeler's house. I'll come to that in a minute. This is the estate manager's bungalow, and here somewhere is the 3 agricultural workers, which means laborers' houses. So I can draw like that. You know, a lot of people ask me. The main thing was you came up here, you had 2 guest rooms here with toilets. This is his suite of a master bedroom, a study, and a toilet with views of the mountains. This was a service unit, and this looked at the sunset as you entered. And that, because this was, you had to go, that became a gallery, an art gallery. So you entered here and you walked up to see the view. So it was a surprise. And this is, as usual, we do drawings after the buildings are over. following a very clear Geoffrey Bawa tradition. The only change is I added a pavilion to give a foreground and a background. That is, from here the pavilion is on the right, from here it tends to be on the right, here it tends to be on the left. So these are views. The building was finished in 2006. Is on that mountain. You can see the pavilion anchoring it. That is the entrance staircase. That is your view. You see the sea, but as you come to that midpoint, that is your view of the mountains. So the whole purpose of our architecture, like Geoffrey Bawa, is not to emphasize the building as an object, but to respect and frame the view that it sees. And that is its sole purpose, to allow life and views to take place and relate to nature, never the building itself. So this is, as you go along further, that's a sculpture done by one of our sculptors called Lucky Senanayaka. That's a night view of the sculptor. But every detail we have gone into, that is a pot done by somebody who studied in Japan. The neck was done by a Swiss designer who unfortunately died last week. And that lampshade is done by somebody else and is all put together. So each one has been detailed thoughtfully. That's a veranda in which we eat breakfast. Those are sculptures by a German designer who has lived in Sri Lanka for 35 years called Klaus. And that is the sunset view of the pavilion. That's another view. That is in the front veranda. But these verandas are very useful because it prevents the monsoons attacking the inside. This is a flying horse. It's a sculpture done by using old mortar spares. That's from bottle tops, which come in a cup. There's a gallery called Red Dot, Cutting Edge Gallery, all to do with anti-war submission. This is a soldier going into the wall. That is Miles Young's bedroom interior, but we don't call these interiors, we just call these installations or collected objects. And these are verandas for the rear rooms. And that's a view. The main purpose of the building is to have a view, nothing else, nothing more. We occasionally have one peacock, wild peacock dancing on the pavilion, sometimes 8. And this is the visitor center. Because cinnamon is unique to Sri Lanka, and my client is a historian. He decided to do a cinnamon museum. Of course, that is not finished yet. And that is the inside of the museum. It started as a staff quarters, but the views were so good that we put ground floor, we put 4 more guest bedrooms, and upstairs you have a museum and a demonstration center for cooking with museum. That's a night view. And this building, which is also designed, needed a pool because sometimes, these are rented out. These expensive houses are rented out when the clients are not here most of the time. So I did a pool here, and that is the section. You have a building, the pool, and these are the views. This was finished much more recently. In impossible, cinnamon land is treacherous. So try and achieve something that is place-making is almost impossible. This is the cinnamon peelers' house. Cinnamon peelers are very low caste. The other communities won't cohabit with them, use their same toilet, eating facilities, or sleeping facilities. So the cinnamon peelers peel cinnamon here and live upstairs in a typical traditional panel, but at the edge of the site. And this won a World Architecture Community. And the building is built with laterite, that is cut earth from the ground. That's the cinnamon peelers. They take a quill, wrap it into each other, let it dry, then they bundle it up and sell, mostly exported. These are industrial, except for the laterite, the other is cement blocks, industrial things, but with light and shadow hitting it, with a few old columns and doors using it. Now these are laborers, it's called agricultural workers. They are 1-bedroom houses, or 2-bedroom houses with one bedroom, a veranda where the young people, the females sleep here, the adults sleep here, The kitchen is here for the mother to check out the courtyard, and the toilet is outside the house. These houses cost about 12,000 baht. That's a kitchen. That's a bedroom with a built-in cupboard and a table. And the goddess of the cinnamon peelers is called Pattini, who comes from South India. So we are doing a cinnamon trail, and this is the shrine for the cinnamon Pattini. She's also the goddess of fertility. There was another, there were two viewpoints, and we invited the students who come there for lunch every year at the request of Mail to design. So this design was developed as a sculpture, well sculpture. We did a full-scale maquette, and that is what it looks like at the end. This is to show that you can also do urban towers. We've done for a client, I've done again 4 projects. There's a double screen in front and back. That's a frontage facing the road. That's the entrance, walking through the garage into the dining room. So this is the entrance. That's a garage. That's a staircase going up. It has a lift. This is a little living room, but big dining room, pantry, kitchen. We actually changed the whole design with the foundation. That's a caretaker room and toilet. So that's a sitting room, dining room. That's a staircase. That's landing on the first floor level. That's looking onto the road. And that's from that landing looking to the second floor level. But this shows you that these are double screens, which prevent, this becomes a security grill, but it also prevents people coming. There's overhang eaves to soften the thing. And all the hot air as a stack effect goes up there. So it again, there was a Japanese person who came to my house and showed that there was a 3-degree variation from top of the roof to below the ceiling, and another 2-degree drop to the middle of the room. Now, the first house I showed you, the energy consumption per month is $25. Now, we never set out to be energy conservative, but because we are a developing poor country, which has been at war for 30 years, these are natural inclinations in which we build. We don't set out to do these. They come as a part of the brief, as a natural part of the brief. So this is the center courtyard. This site is about 48 feet by 48 feet. So when you go up to the second room, that's a master bedroom with a master toilet with a huge terrace. There's a child's room with a toilet. All rather generous. They don't seem pokey at all, actually. That's their toilet. There's a child's toilet room and child's toilet. And when you go upstairs, there's a living room and there's a guest bedroom and a toilet here. And that's what it looks like in 2 directions. Now, one of the things I've been working in the last couple of years is in invisible architecture. Because everyone teaches architecture to be something which is very dominating. And I want my architecture to essentially disappear. I think it's an idea that you have implicitly in Geoffrey Bawa's work, but I would like to make it explicit. So this is a house I was asked to do. So my contributions to architecture, you could say, was if Geoffrey has resolved the things between inside, outside, east and west, and tradition and modern, all I could do was to make it affordable to empower ordinary people, and that is why I like an invisible architecture. That's a road reservation. That's a sea reservation. There's a courtyard in the middle, and this is what the house looks like. From the roadside, you hardly notice it. It's a single-story building. That's how it looks like, very much. That is a center courtyard. That's a kitchen. That's a courtyard from above, and that's a view. You don't need architecture. You don't need to make the view is your mainstay. And I think that is what is really important. If you can respect the view, then I think you have achieved great architecture. That is from the rear courtyard. That's a veranda, upper veranda. That's a view from the upper veranda. And you can see that that is a church, that is a school, that is my house. It's not noticeable from any point. This is another house on another Cinnamon Hill. You go up, there are peacocks all over the place. You go up that staircase, and that is your view. You really don't need to do what I consider too much architecture. The view framed differently is all that you need. Unfortunately, this was occupied about 4 months ago. The drawings are still being done. That is during construction. That's a center courtyard. Yeah, and I end up, I'm just doing a house for a friend of mine in the deep south. And he asked me whether I can do some public toilets because he has 800 constituents visiting him. Earlier it was 8. So this is a public toilet with a seating capacity. This is as you enter, this is you seat. That's the inside of the public toilet. But this is your view. From every public toilet, you could see a river and the landscape beyond. You don't need anything else. So here, this is the landscape. That's a river. This is removed 6 feet, so they can't look on top. And the men appear in one direction, the females appear in one direction. And this is what it's all about, okay? And I think that one should not try and build only for the rich. It's also good to remember to build for ordinary, simple people. Sorry. Yeah, anyway, that is a cartoon of, I always say I like to make a few other people happy. That is what my staff think, the way I do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Anjalendran, for our very, very unique presentations. Now our staff will hand out some small pieces of paper around the room for Q&A, and you are also welcome to use the microphone from at the central aisles to ask questions as well.
Next, please welcome Assistant Professor Katariya Jilapasertgun, the moderator for this session.
Wow, thank you very much for such an inspirational presentation. I feel very moving when I see your very beautiful, magnificent drawings. Thank you very much. Yeah?
Only drawings or the work too?
Oh, the works as well. I'm sure there are many of your fans today, and all the questions are welcome. But while we are waiting for the questions from the floor, I just want to begin the talks. You were saying just now that you've been working with Geoffrey Bawa for 10 years without getting any pay, right? And we can see clearly from your work that the architecture that you've been created have been very much inspired by those years of practicing as an apprentice with Bawa. Could you elaborate more about that experience?
One thing is reasonably very clear. I was influenced, not inspired, not influenced by Geoffrey Bawa. That is to say that Geoffrey didn't, except in an emergency when I helped him out, he and I didn't agree on a lot of things, simply in many things about what architecture was all about whom you build for, the poor, and so on, things like that. But one thing was very, very clear. He and I had a sympathy. He would always be the first person to visit my buildings and enjoy them. I would always be the first to visit his buildings and enjoy them. Yeah. So it's not that we did similar things. I think my architecture is distinctively different. But we had a lot in common in the way one approached the subject of architecture. Yeah. Yeah. And in that way, it was great to have a great mentor who was also a great friend.
Yeah, you become a great friend afterwards, right? I remember you were like sort of saying in one of the interviews, you said that even you did a master from UCL and then you came back and practicing architecture for a few years in Sri Lanka. But still, you did not know what architecture was all about.
I think I had 3 degrees and 5 years experience, and I was almost sure I didn't know what it was about.
Yeah.
So then Geoffrey said, why don't you go on your own? I will give you some work, and maybe we could start from there. But I spent, with his many hours I spent with him every weekend in the garden, and looking at him, how he's solved nature and architecture. In 10 years, you learn to be an architect. I mean, it was better than any education you could get. I'm not saying that the other education was bad. It helped you discipline and train your mind. But the person who finally gave me myself was Geoffrey Bawa.
That's very clear. Okay. Any question from the floor? Okay. I think the question is written in Thai, so I'll translate. This person was asking about, he's saying that your work is very beautiful and it looks very shading and very nice with all the trees, with the big trees. But having big trees just next to the building might, destroy the structure. So how do you deal with that?
No, I mean, quite a few trees are deep-rooted trees. It's no problem building next to a mango tree. A mango tree is deep root. It's disastrous building next to a banyan tree because that's a shallow root. But there are ways in which you can handle it. And the answer is, nowadays, everybody says they're building for 30 years. In 30 years, a tree with a banyan tree is fantastic. And I mean, places like Angkor Wat is full of banyan trees over its building. But that is what I'm saying, that a lot of clients are now worried about buildings being damaged and so on. They are not worried about life. They don't have a life. They're worried about completely unnecessary things which have very little to do with life. I think it's much better to enjoy a tree and get your building broken than not have a tree and have a building.
Any other questions? Okay, while we were waiting for the question, so we'll just continue talking. Okay. I read the book written by David Robson, and he spoke about, the process that you've created architecture. He said the process that you created it is interesting as much as the architecture itself. And then he also described like the way, you do everything in the work from the beginning till it's until it's completed. And then you even help the client choose the builder and also advise them to choose the color, furnitures, and decorations, everything. Is that actually a secret, No,
I think that the most important thing is I like to get to know my clients. So I actually go for my site visits once in 2 weeks at least. Sri Lanka is a very small place. You can go anywhere. You can go in the morning and come back in the evening. So in that process, you get to know your clients, and your client gets to know you, and between the two of you, you try to provide, you make it a home, not a building.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're doing something on a drawing board, you're just getting it built. The client doesn't know how to live in it, then something else happens. So I actually, with my building a building, the client is forced to have an education as to how they should live in it. I think that's very important.
That's one of the role of the architect, isn't it? Which is to educate the client as well?
That is, I think, for me, it is the main role of the architect. Everyone thinks that architecture is a building. I hardly think so. I've always said the architecture is the background to nature. It's the background for a client to live in it well and comfortably. And the architecture should never dominate. So then the other things are more important or should work better than the architecture. You see, because the architecture is most dominant, then the client and all become less dominant. So I think for me, the most important statement I can make is that my clients have got educated. And if my clients can start buying their own works of art, which I approve, which is difficult, then I think I've made it.
Yeah. And then you've become a very good friend with
Yes.
all the clients.
All my clients, I can go anytime, unannounced, and I'm welcome.
That's very nice.
And that is over a period of 35 years. It's a
Yeah.
great achievement. Those are my achievements. I've never signed a contract in my life. That's another achievement. So I think that there's a different attitude towards life. It's not what you would call a commercial attitude.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, I've only done one commercial building in my life. I didn't show it this time because it was about habitat. But I've done, and that's in Karachi, in a place, not Karachi, in a place called Sakar, which is 400 kilometers north of Karachi. I've done a departmental store, small one. But generally, I deal with one-to-one individuals and their homes.
Any questions from the floor? Okay, please. Mr. Angton?
Thank you. Sir, I'm very impressed by your designs, absolutely beautiful. I'd like to know, as a young professor in Sri Lanka University, and try to teach little things to my students, what do you teach to your students?
Oh, very simply. Number one, I always teach my students their background. I think if you're not proud of who you are, then you become an American, which I don't think is a good idea. Right? So the first thing I do, unfortunately, I show my students their own culture. So they are proud of whom they are. If you can't do that, it is useless. So we spend when I teach, we spend more than 50% of the time looking at things. Looking at contemporary architecture, looking at traditional architecture, going for exhibitions. In our little country, we have a 2,500-year-old heritage. And we go and see quite a lot of it. Because I think that is the key to architecture. I think it's a key to my architecture and Geoffrey's architecture. It shows very clearly that though we have studied in the Western world, which shows you a way of looking at things, we are not directly influenced by them. We think there's another way of looking at things in Asia and in our own countries. It's just that most of us don't know our own countries.
That's very true.
Horrible. You ask me a question, I do give an answer.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Hi. I talked to an Indian architect. His name is Mitul Desai. He's a kind of research associate for Bijoy Jain.
Yeah?
And I asked him, which architects do you like in India? He says, I don't. All the best ones are in Sri Lanka. and he's not the first person who said that as well.
No, we have a very good architectural tradition. I wouldn't say it's directly influenced by Bawa. I mean, now there's a new book called The New Sri Lankan Home. They say 4 of them studied under Bawa, but 8 of them studied under me. So there's another. But I've spent 2 decades teaching, which means you can influence a thing. And one thing I can assure you, I've never taught any of my students to be like me. I've always encouraged them to be themselves and different. I don't want anyone remotely thinking like me, because I think I wouldn't say that what works for me works for everybody else, right? But the thing I have shown them is that they should learn to be proud of themselves.
That's what I also believe in. I also teach as well. Okay, more question?
Just to fill the gap. To continue on whatever he said, I think it will be useful for the audience to know what it is, since I happen to be around. I have worked for him. That's my qualification. I've just worked for him for 4 years. What it does is that his architecture could be contagious. You could easily copy it, but when you copy it, it could be disastrous because you are not going to get it right. This is my personal opinion, because when you watch him carefully, you know, there's everything is it's kind of transparent with Anjalendran. He would design in front of the client then and there. It's not about a secret, you know, recipe or something. It's just there, done in front of a client, done in front of a lot of people, and that's exactly what he gets it built. And there's nothing to hide. So when you do that, and if you're a little bit intelligent, you keep watching him without even telling him that you're watching, it can be contagious. You could actually end up doing like if you want to, but but that's not something that if you copy it, it can become disastrous. And in Sri Lanka, there are some people who are trying to do that, and when you see it, you know, you feel that, you know, it's all wrong. So that's about it, and I think it's very important. And also, you know, they are masters in Sri Lanka. They have always, I think I belong to the third generation or fourth, but all our masters have actually encouraged people, every student, to, you know, think for themselves and to move on. So I think that is the success of, you know, whatever that's happening in Sri Lanka right now. We are blessed to have great teachers.
Thank you for elaborating that. Any other questions from the floor?
Okay. 6 minutes more, that's fine.
Yeah, we have 6 minutes more.
Doesn't matter. 6 minutes, you can go to the hall to buy bags. Okay, thank you very, very much.
You want to end the session?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, question.
Yeah, from here. Actually, I try to find out the question because you said your work.
Where are you?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Okay, fine,
Yeah.
all right.
Because I understand that you try to express your work as nothing. It's like a background of the nature. It reminds me about the philosophy of Buddhism, about
Yes, it is.
self doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So is that something related to the belief in Buddhism philosophy?
Well, I think that I'm a Hindu, but I do believe in this sense. I mean, the problem we have is that though this Buddhism preaches tranquility and peacefulness and all, we are a very bloody country. For 30 years, we have a horrible war and bloodshed. But I would strive to be peaceful. Even though I'm a Hindu, I would like peace and harmony, and my buildings to be meditative spaces. In fact, the best compliment I can ever get in any of my buildings is somebody has come and said, look, I feel good.
Anjalendran, let's talk more about the everyday architecture that you were saying.
Yeah, I mean, what I've said is, if you look at all the projects I've done,
Yeah.
except for one project, all the others for ordinary people, doctors, furniture makers, orphanages, meaning this whole notion that architecture is only the province of rich clients, I dislike. You know, I think that architecture should be there to encourage, make everybody happy. You know, ordinary people. That's what I call architecture for the everyday.
Yeah.
That is to say that it mustn't be only the province of the rich. And that's again something that is not the way architecture is taught. I think the whole thing about design is that you can make something like the origami bird and you can create magic out of nothing.
Yeah.
And that is what I think is the purpose of architecture, or at least my architecture. You know, I'm not saying I'm doing great architecture, but I can say I'm making a lot of people around me happy. And that I think is greater.
He's also an expert in origami. Okay. Any other question to end up the session? Otherwise, I will end the session. Okay. You just want to end the session. Okay. Okay. I think we've learned a lot from you today with those like inspirational works, and I think I would like to close the session that Anjalendran is not just the inspiring architects, not just a teacher, but also a very real practitioner. And I want to just end the session by saying one of his words while we were talking during the lunch just now. He said, architecture is just like origami, in which that you could create the magic out of nothing. So thank you very much, Anjalendran.
Thank you, Chelvadurai Anjalendran and Assistant Professor Kattaliya Jilaprasertgun. Now, I would like to invite Ajahn Kattaliya to give a token of appreciation to the speaker, please.
And thank you for the beautiful furniture on stage from Curio. And lastly, a short PR presentation from ASA. Okay, and I will switch that into Thai. So สมาคมสถาปนิกสยามนะคะขอเรียนเชิญสมาชิกและผู้สนใจร่วมกันนำเสนอแบบบ้านที่ถูกออกแบบให้สอดคล้องกับพัฒนาการและความเปลี่ยนแปลงในช่วงรัชสมัยแห่งการครองราชย์ของในหลวงรัชกาลที่ 9 ระหว่างปีพ.ศ. 2489 ถึง 2559 เพื่อดำเนินการรวบรวมและตีพิมพ์ลงในหนังสือบ้านในรัชสมัยของในหลวงรัชกาลที่ 9 โดยสมาชิกและผู้สนใจสามารถเข้าไปดูข้อมูลเพิ่มเติมได้ที่อาสาเว็บไซต์แล้วก็อีเมลที่ขึ้นไว้บนจอณขณะนี้นะคะโดยมีขั้นตอนการส่งข้อมูลคือถ่ายรูปแบบบ้านในรัชกาลที่ 9 สแกน QR code จากนั้นก็อัปโหลดภาพขึ้นเว็บไซต์ค่ะ
และอีกหนึ่งโครงการที่จะขอประชาสัมพันธ์คือโครงการ Holodex Architects นะคะสำหรับสถาปนิกและนักศึกษานะคะซึ่งเป็นส่วนหนึ่งของโครงการอาสา Dialog นะคะประกอบไปด้วยการจัดนิทรรศการการอบรมปฏิบัติการระยะสั้นและการเสวนาเชิงวิชาชีพและวิชาการโดยในปีนี้จะมีการบรรยายโดยสถาปนิกจากบริษัท Holodex ผู้ออกแบบสถานทูตออสเตรียและจะมาทำเวิร์กช็อปและบรรยายในวันที่ 14 มิถุนายนนี้เวิร์กช็อปจะเริ่มตั้งแต่วันที่ 17 มิถุนายนถึง 30 กรกฎาคมนะคะสามารถส่งพอร์ตโฟลิโอได้ที่ vienna@holodexarchitects.com ที่ขึ้นอยู่บนหน้าจอหรือว่าอยากทราบรายละเอียดเพิ่มเติมเข้าทางอาสาเว็บไซต์ได้ค่ะสำหรับผู้ที่มารับฟังและลงทะเบียนออนไลน์มาแล้วนี่นะคะสามารถ
ช่วยแสดง QR code ให้กับเจ้าหน้าที่ก่อนเข้าร่วมฟังเลคเชอร์ในครั้งถัดไปในพรุ่งนี้เช้าด้วยนะคะ
พรุ่งนี้เช้าค่ะ
ค่ะแล้วก็เวลานี้ยังทันนะคะ5 โมง 5 นาทีจะขอเชิญร่วมร้องเพลงถวายความอาลัยแด่พระบาทสมเด็จพระปรมินทรมหาภูมิพลอดุลยเดชรัชกาลที่ 9 ณ บริเวณลานนิทรรศการสถาปนิกแห่งแผ่นดินนะคะเวลา 17.45 น.นะคะที่โถงทางเข้าชั้น 2 Challenger Hall และในเย็นวันนี้นะคะเวลา 6 โมงถึง 5 ทุ่มอาสาได้จัดงานอาสาไนท์นะคะซึ่งคุณจะได้รับชมโชว์พิเศษจาก STEM แล้วก็ The Rhythm Nation Bandนะคะที่ Grand Diamond Ballroom ค่ะก็ขอเรียนเชิญด้วยนะคะแล้วก็สุดท้ายนะคะสมาชิกอาสานะคะสามารถขอรับสูติบัตรบ้านหนังสือ Le Corbusier and Louis Icahn นักกายกรรมและโยคีแห่งสถาปัตยกรรมได้ที่อาสาคลับนะคะฟรีนะคะแล้วก็สุดท้ายนะคะ After all the presentations today, our ASA International Forum has come to a close. Tomorrow there will be 3 sessions by
Fabrizio Borlozzi from Spain นะคะ Max Chavitella Studio from Germany and Shinko Masuda from Japan. Thank you for joining us today and hope to see you all tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow at 10:30.